plugged into the Unity and New Thought movement. It was about 25 years ago now. And I was a little put off by the emphasis on prosperity and abundance and whatnot. I had some baggage from old church experience around that and my own scarcity issues. But I also was drawn to it. Now, to give you a little bit of a backstory, some of you know a little bit about my story, but I was raised a rough little farm kid up in the foothills of Washington State. Both of my parents were from Oklahoma. My father had been raised in deep poverty, and I remember him telling stories about living in a dirt-floored house. They would put cardboard up on the windows in the winter, and his mom had lost her leg to gangrene and had a really painful prosthetic. This was a long time ago. And he remembered seeing her crawl across frozen ground to try to dig turnips to feed him and his siblings. So I started hearing those stories, and my mom also had some pretty rough stories. Now, I was the first person in my ancestry not born in Oklahoma and Arkansas because my mom, they call this jumping out of the frying pan into the fire. My mom left her first husband for his younger brother, my dad. So they had to get the hell out of Dodge. That's why I was born in Seattle. And turns out my half-brother and sister were also my cousins. Yeah. So I used to love telling that story actually when I was serving as First Lady of Oregon because you could just see the audience kind of be like trying to process it. Now, when I was about 7, my very hardworking parents had saved enough money to buy a little 8-acre chunk of land up in those foothills, second growth forest, and the structure that was on it had been a hippie commune out there. This was way out in the boonies, and it was so run down that it came free with the property. It had no roof. It had certainly no electricity or running water. I mean, it really was a shack. Probably should have been razed and rebuilt, but that's not what we did. And that first summer, we would bathe in Old Man Green's pond just down the dirt road. And when it got colder, first of all, my dad strung visqueen, heavy plastic, over one section of the roof. And when it got colder, he made a wood stove out of a 55-gallon drum welded to 2 metal chair legs, and it would glow orange. It would get so hot. And during that time, every once a week or so, God bless my mom for all she pulled together with this, because she worked full-time too, we would make the 45-minute drive to the nearest town that had a public swimming pool. And that's where we all got to get really cleaned up and stuff and have a little fun as well. And every 2 weeks, when they'd get paid, they'd buy building supplies, and over time, we built that little shack into something relatively livable. We didn't have a lot of money. We got our school clothes from Value Village and Goodwill, and like Kmart was a big deal, right? It was a big visit, was a big adventure for us. So we didn't have a lot of money, but we did have a lot of richness. I mean, a lot of freedom as kids, and I learned how to do basic plumbing, basic electrical. I was driving by the time I was 9 or 10 and back in trailers, and those have been skills that have helped me through my whole life. Got a horse when I was 8, my lifelong dream at that point, and was always surrounded by dogs and cats and farm animals and all kinds of wild animals, bear and deer and coyotes and all of that. It was rich, and I loved it. Now, some of you also know this story. Addiction and mental illness took a toll on my family, and I wound up on my own at 16, and basically couch surfing in a feeling that was very insecure, very uncertain, and I was pretty much angry at the world, certainly at all authority at that point. And that's when I started, I think, to really layer on a lens of material insecurity. And that's been a process of evolving through that the entire rest of this life, and I'm delighted to say it's been a pretty successful process. I stabilized in my early 20s, and I really embarked on my own authentic spiritual path and a journey of unlearning and relearning and carving a different course in my life. And like I said, 25 years ago when I discovered unity, the prosperity stuff left me a little uncomfortable, but it also drew me because I could sense a feeling of liberation. I didn't know what it was, but I wanted it. I could feel that. For many, many, many of us, money and financial challenges. How am I going to pay the bills? How am I going to deal with that unexpected car breakdown? How am I going to give my kids or even my animals the care they need and the best? This can be one of the biggest threads of stress throughout these entire part of our human journeys. For me, it has been. It has been my biggest growth classroom. In truth, though, even when I was feeling in scarcity, I was always cared for. And I was already living a rich, incredible life, despite some of those financial challenges that are real. I'm not here to say be silly and stupid and don't pay your bills. And I'm also not here to give any financial advice. I should have said that right up front. But the lens is so important in a prosperity perspective. And I also do want to acknowledge it's not made any easier by the fact that we currently are swimming through a cultural soup that is based in and drives the message of scarcity and not enoughness, right? It tries to, billions of dollars are spent telling us we're not enough, we don't have enough, we need this and this and this and this to be happier, sexier, more effective, have more value, what have you. That's the soup that we swim in. So it takes extra spiritual discipline to be able to acknowledge the BS that is and adopt a much more empowered way of moving through this world. So how do we do that? How do we unplug from pre-programming and a lot of false stories and false narratives and airbrushed images that we're being told to compare ourselves to? One of the first big transformations that was helpful to me, and it's a fundamental, I hate that word actually, it's a foundational unity and new thought principle, is that yes, money is an important aspect of prosperity, but prosperity is much bigger than that. And can you put up the prosperity pie image if this works? Oh, that's hard to see, but I'll talk you through it. I've been teaching ever since I became a minister, actually a little bit before. I've taught a lot of spiritual education and enrichment classes. These are classes that anybody can take, but they're classes that anyone on a unity ministerial path are required to take a number of them, and prosperity is one. And I've taught it a few times now. Being a minister is so cool because you basically get to call doing your own spiritual growth work. You know, like a career work. That's what these classes have been for me. And what I've got here in this pie, if you can see it, I've developed kind of all the areas that I would put into a prosperity spectrum. There's one more I'll add, I'll get to that at the end, but certainly money's up there, health, family, relationships, etc. We heard a lot of different aspects of prosperity in the celebrations part today, right? Healed relationships, finding a new home, plugging into a sense of community. Now, I want to take you through a couple of these in a second, but first, here's another breakthrough that I had around prosperity. I'm going to read something from one of the books that I always work with in the prosperity classes is Eric Butterworth and its Spiritual Economics. And if this resonates with you, another great one is The Soul of Money by Lynn Twist. Really, really wonderful. But this is on page 15. I want you to think about the concept of substance. The word substance comes from the Latin substare, which means to stand under. There is a substance standing under everything. We're not referring just to the component parts that make up the thing, but to the non-material essence at the root of it. Today, we know much about molecules and atoms and subatomic particles. But what is not commonly known is that the focus of research is now being centered not on the minute particles of the material, but on what is called the reality of the non-material. The space between them is now considered more important than the particles themselves. In this space is to be found a field of force that holds the particles in their orbits. It is even being conjectured that the particle is not just acted upon by the force, but it is the force acting as a particle. Certainly, this has application in our relation to God. We are not just acted upon by God, but we are the activity of God expressing as us. A breakthrough in my thinking around prosperity was when I realized there's a substance from which all that takes form originates. And with our thinking, we help to shape what is going to actually manifest from this substance that is in and around and through everything. An aha for me was when I made one positive step when I went from source, whatever you call it, source, God, creator is my supplier. It's not just up to little old me. I made the next step when I said source, God, creator is my supply. From supplier to supply. We tap in and there is actually an inexhaustible amount of that substance to manifest in whatever piece of that prosperity pie we're focused on right now. Health. Health, of course, is a huge prosperity component. I have been struggling with a little bug this week. I've been overcoming a bug this week. First time and I can't even remember how long. So each of us here will have areas that we naturally have more strength in and areas that we can use a little bit of shoring up, a little bit of growth. I tend to just have a strong belief in my health. I have had more knee surgeries than you can shake a stick at. Not because I had bad knees, but because I've been kind of a daredevil with this body. And many times I've had people, doctors or whomever, people at the gym, say, hey, how's the bad knee doing? I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't have a bad knee. I have a couple of really good knees that I have put through the ringer, and they are still sound, functional, and I'm running, right? I don't say like this week, I started to, but I caught myself. One of the great things about New Thought is we learn to become more intentional, not only in our thinking, but in our language. I don't say I am sick. The word we put after I am, or the phrase we put after I am, is one of the most powerful phrases we can pay attention to. I don't say I am sick. I will say I am recovering from a gnarly little bug. That's been effective for me. The other thing I will offer, the actual money piece of this has been my greatest challenge of all these pieces of that pie. Because I had such a naturally strong faith in the health aspect, whatever you have strength in, that you feel, you can feel that belief of, I know this is going to be okay. I know I'm going to get this manifestation in that area. You can use that feeling to help you in any of the other areas that may feel like they have a deficit. So that's a way that I was able to really turn around areas that I wasn't as strong in. Now, one of the newest ones I added, actually, in my last prosperity class that I taught was self-esteem, self-worth. This is because I have had a family member who many of you know, he's my nephew that I helped to raise, who had a long prison sentence, got out, was having some good success, had some struggle, he's back in prison. And it's very painful for me, that, honestly, because I love him. And when I look at the totality of the reasons that he has struggled so hard, I would say his innate lack of self-esteem is probably causal. It's at the root of it. You know, he wasn't given a very good start to build one, but this is something that we can work on. Self-esteem relates to self-worth, self-belief, that relates to every other piece of this pie. And I want to read you, let's see where I put it, another piece from Eric Butterworth's Spiritual Economics. He says, "You do not see things as they are, but as you are. You will always tend to act like the person you conceive yourself to be. This is your self-image. As Emerson says, you surround yourself with the image of yourself. If your self-image is faulty, you project its limitation into every experience. Many inadequate job situations are the direct results of a self-image of inadequacy being impressed on the job experience. But you can change how you see yourself. We can change the way we see ourselves. That's in our wheelhouse. We have that power. Your story and your description of yourself is yours alone. You get to create your own narrative. And there are a million narratives that can be true. But you might as well pick a more empowering one. Now, making a contribution or purpose, that's a super important one for many of us. That's been a very, very driving, important aspect of this life that I'm having right now. And I'll tell you, I did some work a few years ago now, more than just a few, on the Global Wellbeing Lab out of MIT, and we did work in Germany, Bhutan, the favelas, the ghettos of Rio, and also way up tributaries in the Amazon, in little villages up there, by any Western definition, had no money, right? Were not prosperous. But they were in their own right. Here's what was really interesting. We were studying well-being. What makes people feel well? What makes people feel good about life and whatnot? And the thing that trickled up in all of those settings, wealthy entrepreneurs in Berlin, remote villages in the Amazon, they wanted to feel like they were valuable to their community. They wanted to feel like they were making some positive contribution. This is almost an innate human need. Here's the deal. I've had some lofty goals. Like, I still really want to have a big influence in shifting the entire freaking global capitalistic, limitless growth, consumption-driven, earth-killing economy. That's my real goal, right? I want to help us make the shift to a restoration economy that's saner, healthier, and a whole lot more fun to live in for most of us. Yes, it hasn't gotten any easier in the last little while, but hey. So I still have that big lofty goal, but you know, life has a way of humbling us a little bit, often, and often that's not a bad thing. Because the other thing I'm learning, and it came the hard way for me multiple times, making a contribution isn't just about what we do, it's about how we be. And I got to the point where I realized, because I can be a pretty self-absorbed, I'm busy, I'm a type A, let's get her done, I'm in the grocery line, the people in front of me are slow, and I want to go. So I open to that more now. And this has been the teachings of this community and unity. The greatest contribution I may ever make, the biggest step I may ever take in helping us shift to a saner way of developing a civilization and an economy, is showing kindness to that person that I have a one-on-one interaction with, right? That is a part of our purpose. And to that end, I want to read one more thing from Spiritual Economics, and this is on page 172. Who has not exclaimed at some low moment of their life, "My life has no meaning"? This sense of meaningless is the greatest cause of depression and even of compulsive addiction in the form of overeating, alcoholism, and drug addiction. But you see, life doesn't have meaning. Only you have meaning. It makes about as much sense to say my life has no meaning as it does to stand in the dark cave with an unlit flashlight in your hand and say, this place has no light. Jesus would say, let your light shine. Meaning is not to be found out there, in a job, in another person, or in a relationship. Meaning is something you release from within. You put meaning into your work, into your experiences, and into every relationship with people. Many persons find great meaning in their lives through a kind of work that would be a drag to someone else. It's not the work, but the sense of giving in which it is done. So you have meaning. We have meaning. It's not about finding meaning, right? It's about releasing our light and our meaning. Now, I always like to leave folks with these talks with some practical tools, steps that can just leave here with. One of the best prosperity practices I've taken up is keeping a blessings journal. Now, I'm a journaler anyway. I, noodle and think. This is different. This is just a little notepad that every day or thereabouts, I just write down bullet points of blessings that happened. Found a buck on the street. Got a client. Whatever. Little things. Got a free car wash when I got my car serviced. Whatever. The thing I love about this is it puts you in a lens of looking for that. If you know you're going to want to jot some blessings down, at the end of the day, you're kind of looking for them throughout the day. It's a lens. Money is called currency, right? It's about flow. That's why we talk about tithing. That's why we talk about giving. A Course in Miracles says giving and receiving are the same. The deeper I go with this, the more I see layers and layers of the truth to that. So now in my blessings journal, this is kind of new over the last year. When I'm able to give, I put that in my blessings journal. I was able to help a friend today. That's my blessing. That is another way that I am finding is helping me continue the shift from more of a scarcity lens to more of a prosperity consciousness. I love this term. It's somewhere in the Butterworth stuff. He said, just like we make a point of talking about a healthful diet or a healthful way of life, we can develop more wealthful thinking. That was a very cool term when I first heard it. Wealthful thinking. And I'll give you an example. You all know I have a little border collie dog, and I do competitive dog agility with her, and I am very, very attached to this dog and the whole thing we do together, right? It's a little bit of an addiction right now. Well, the other couple weeks ago, and I still don't know how she did it, Olive, my dog, knocked just her upper front tooth. She hit it so hard on something and pushed it back to the point it was an underbite. And I was like, clearly this is going to be surgery, right? My first thought was, oh my God, what is this going to cost, right? And I take her in and I get it diagnosed, and sure enough, it's got to come out. Set that for 2 days later and get her on pain meds, of course. And it all came down to, had she fractured the root? There was a great variation in how much this was going to cost, depending upon if they could just pull the tooth or if it was going to require all that surgery. So I go to drop her off the day of the surgery. And before I did, though, I wrote in my blessings journal, I'm able to get Olive good care. I'm able to get this taken care of. Many years ago, I took a prosperity class with Reverend Jane Hyatt, and one of the coolest takeaways from that for me was when you're feeling in scarcity, when you're feeling a little shaky, imagine yourself feeling what a person of more means would do. So you see, my identity is still a work in process catching up to someone who actually does have, I don't love it, but I have the ability to pay $1,400 for my dog's surgery. It was on the high end of the scale. She busted the roots all to pieces. But I was able to do that. And I made a decision. I'm not going to go into this fearing it. I'm going to go into this knowing one way or another, I'm able to get it done. It's going to go on a zero-interest credit card for right now, and we're going to get that handled, right? I'm able to get it done. And it was, I am a person with enough means to give my dog the best. So that's a really powerful use of one of our 12 powers, imagination. Now, I'll tell you another related to this, the imagination, also related to my dog agility addiction. I have been jonesing for 3 years for this certain kind of little travel trailer that my particular car can pull, but it also has like all the amenities inside. Very hard to find at this low weight range. It's called an A-scape. And it's about $25,000, and I did not have anywhere close to that. And but I really wanted this little trailer, and I just kept taking pictures of it. There was a Facebook A-scape group that I joined, I would just daydream. I drew a little diagram of what my little trailer would look like with my little portable dog fences when I was at dog agility trials, and I kept that in my folder. There's one dealer that has these trailers in Oregon, up in Happy Valley. 2 years ago, way before I even was a gleam in how I could afford this, I drove out there to see one. I brought Olive. I got a picture of Olive in the trailer. I'd pull that up on my computer. Well, I had some surprising money come through toward the tail end of last year that I did not see coming. Family related. Never saw that coming. And I knew that winter was the best time to buy a trailer, right? Best time to buy it. Long and the short of it, there's one on the West Coast within driving range that I was driving distance. They were willing to come way down because A-scape is going to start running the 2025s in March. I got the A-scape trailer. Yes! Now, here's the other piece of this, though. This is how we're like, at least for me, speaking from the I, even when I have prosperity breakthroughs, I still have to watch that old identity. There's a term in Unity called chemicalization. And what it means is when we get to a breakthrough in spiritual awareness or a new belief that somehow challenges or is in dissonance with our old beliefs, it can be a time of foment, like a time of unsettledness. Right? We haven't quite stepped into, we can sense it, but we haven't stepped into this new identity or this new belief fully. The week after I got that trailer, I woke up stressed out every single day. I was stressed out thinking about it. Was it the right move? I hadn't even tested out the water systems yet, right? Olive and I are going to Agility Nationals in Tulsa in March, and I really wanted this trailer before that. But I had just driven it back from Boise. That's it. I haven't even taken it over real mountains yet. All of this I was thinking, and it was like, I get this thing that I've wanted, and now I'm stressed out about it. And I realized I was having prosperity. And I had a few people on Facebook I posted on. People were like, oh my God, I'm so envious. I would love to have something like that. I felt so guilty, right? So I was having prosperity chemicalization. My identity had not fully gotten to, it is totally well and okay and good that I have this. It took me a while to catch that and to realize, often when we're growing, and then that little old ego wants to pull us back to where we were. Chemicalization. That's where I went to. Now, we have our first big test of this thing set up at a trial mid-February, but what I've noticed, now that the light has shifted, it's still cold out here, but the light is a little different. You can feel we're moving towards spring, right? The stress is gone, and I can't wait to get in that trailer. I can't wait for us to do our first little run. So, two more pieces that I love. Enoughness consciousness. Just doing some work on enoughness consciousness. A great American just made their transition, President Jimmy Carter. He was a model of a great life, honestly, and a model of enoughness consciousness. He could have had all the wealth, all the money. He could have had a big, fancy house. That was not his form of prosperity. He still rinsed out and reused Ziploc bags to the very end. right? His prosperity was very broad, very broad. I would say making a contribution in relationships way high with him. So enoughness consciousness, because again, we're swimming through a soup that wants us to feel like we're not enough, so that we'll buy stuff to fill a manufactured gap within ourselves. And the final one that I want to leave you with, this is my more recent little practical tool for prosperity in whatever of those pieces of the pie you're focused on. And that's what I call positive expects. Positive expectation. Positive expects. I literally will write that, especially if I'm feeling a little shaky. I'll write it at the top of my daily list. If I'm going into a situation I don't necessarily feel good about, I will remind myself, open up some room for positive expectations. This could be so much better than we think. I really started having breakthroughs in the money front when I got more playful with it. And I don't mean frivolous. I don't mean running up credit card debt or anything like that. But I got to where I really don't, it was with the trailer. I have no idea how this is going to come about, but it is going to be so fun to see how it happens. Right? That's a really empowered way to look at it because it also opens up to it doesn't have to happen a certain way. There's myriad ways for things to manifest into our lives in positive flow. So to close, I want to leave you with that piece that I shared. I would now add one more section to the pie, and that is hope. Because right now, we are living in the midst of some hard things and some hard times and the separation dynamics that Nate mentioned earlier. And it can certainly feel like it's out of our control, and some of it can feel a little hopeless. That will affect, no matter what, our consciousness around prosperity, health, anything else. I'm not so sure that my sickness is not because a certain thing happened on Monday. I'm just saying. Hope is not about pretending that dark and troubling things are not happening. It's not about ostriching and putting our head in the sand, about pretending that there aren't dark things afoot in the world even. But rather, hope is trusting that those things won't last forever. That there are many more possibilities for good to emerge out of that substance than what seems obvious in the moment. Spiritual abundance often arises through pressure and challenge, and that is in both the personal and the collective aspects of our existence. You are a spiritual being having a human experience. That's just a trip in and of itself. You're a spiritual being having a human experience. You are connected to the all that is, creator, source, God, whatever your word for it is. That creative force that is behind all things, you are directly connected. You are an extension, an expression of that. Source literally is your supply. You are worthy. You are enough. You are worthy of good. Go forth and prosper.